I'm driven. I mean, we're both cut from the same cloth, like hard charging, like want to be successful, have like really high standards for ourselves, like self-improvement, self-mastery.
Yeah.
So I've always been from the mindset of like, hey, I'm not good enough as is. Like I need to get to another level. I need to, continuously improve myself.
Right. All right, Bryce, my man.
Jay.
So good to have you here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's just do a little background stuff, and then we'll just go from there. So give your background a little bit. I mean, there's a bunch of questions I want to ask you, but
how far do you want me to go back?
I mean, just how you got into kind of fitness. I mean, you've been pretty open about drinking and things like that. I want to get into that. To where you are now as a CEO, but start with like your journey, how you first started getting into fitness, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a very high level back in my early days, but I grew up the first 10 years in Atlanta, Georgia. My dad was an alcoholic, addicted to gambling and drugs, not the trifecta for a good family upbringing.
Yeah.
So my first 10 years was very volatile at that, but thankfully.
And you guys had what kind of relationship? Not great?
Not great.
Yeah.
Just, that when you have that addiction, specifically drugs and alcohol, but then gambling just kind of threw a whole wrench in it.
Yeah.
But it's just, very volatile upbringing. So thankfully my mom got us out of that situation, and, unfortunate in one ways, but very fortunate in the others to, more of a stable environment. But my mom did not have any vision for.
So how old were you when that happened?
About 10.
Okay.
So
because I saw on your Instagram, you said your mom basically played the role of both parents.
She did, man. She did. Yeah, she's like huge lifesaver. And her mindset going in, she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, raise her 3 kids, and live a raise a beautiful family. It just didn't work out with the right guy, but we got into a better situation. Thankfully, my grandma took us in. Otherwise, we would probably been in a shelter or worse. So my mom raised us on a secretary salary, 3 kids, working mom, run out of money before you should run out of month. So humble beginnings for first world standards. Wow. I always preface that because, later in my life, I ended up living in South America for a couple of years, and I saw the difference between humble beginnings for first world standards and third world standards. So that perspective really helped me. Yeah. But needless to say, throughout that period of from 10 to 21, worked 17 jobs from 11 years old, donated blood plasma to put myself through school. It was just scrappy. It built grit. And I think there was a lot of, good lessons about, relationships and leaning on family and work ethic that served me well.
What were some of those jobs?
Anywhere from, my first was actually a referee. So the state, this is funny, man. I'm always tricking the system from an entrepreneurial mindset. But in the state of Michigan, where my family moved, you have to be 14 to legally work, but you can referee soccer at the age of 12, and you can actually enroll in classes at the age of 11. Wow. So I had this vision where I enrolled myself when I was 11 years old, started refereeing soccer, and I was making $20 an hour.
Amazing.
And I was actually making more money than my mom at that period of time, which is funny. But it started from that, and then working from Burger King, flipping burgers, fast food joints and all that, just delivering papers. The problem was I didn't have money for a car, so depending on where I was from college, I'd moved to college and then had to move back, so it was very dependent from a local perspective on where I could work. And as soon as that season ran its course, then I have to move and find a new job. But it just part for the course. It taught me grit, it taught me work ethic, and I wouldn't have had it either way.
Yeah. Do you remember any other specific lessons from some of those jobs during those times?
Ooh. I remember that I fucking hate manual labor. And one of my buddies...
I did that for 3-4 summers. Brutal. Yeah.
And I figured that out when I was 15 or 16. One of my best friends at the time, his uncle, had this biggest country western bar in Metro Detroit, and he had a landscaping project for the summer. So I was all right, cool. It was $30 an hour when I was 15, 16 years old. Yes, in all cash. Yeah. After spending a few weeks from that, I was I'm gonna get through it for the summer.
You're getting $30. Wait, I got scammed so bad in my construction days. I was making $8 an hour. Yeah. I'm a little older than you.
And I don't know, he was probably doing some other things and, able to get money under the table, but a lot of money, especially at that, time in my life. But I also realized I want to work with my mind, leading and, building a business versus, doing manual labor. And there's nothing wrong with manual labor. It just didn't suit me.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
But anyways, that was kind of my upbringing, and but I was not into fitness at all. When you're running out of money before you run out of a month, like Taco Bell was a staple of my diet.
Yep.
And so when I was a senior in high school, or a senior in college, I got an internship. We were just talking about Santa Monica in LA, which then got me out to Southern California, which then turned into a full-time sales gig. So, I was excited to be in California, the palm trees, the beaches, everything that has to offer.
Right.
We were just literally having a conversation offline on this.
Yeah.
So I was stoked, but when you're 21 years young, you're 3,000 miles from home. You don't have professional skills. I don't have, network. I wasn't fit. I didn't have confidence. So I had more dark days than good. Okay. And I lived that way for the first couple of years.
Where were you living exactly?
West LA, the 405 and Wilshire.
Gotcha.
And started kind of dabbling into fitness, but I didn't stick with it. I didn't have a mentor or coach or anything like that. But a fortuitous situation happened. One of my best buddies from college, it was my first fitness mentor. His name is Adam, and he moved out west. That's actually what took me down to Orange County. I was living in West LA. He got a job in Irvine, like really where we're close to shooting this podcast today. Yeah. And we ended up living together for the better part of 2 years. And really what Adam did for 2 years, but hyper-focused over 6 months, he introduced me to circuit training, lifting weights, clean nutrition, and then most importantly, coaching and accountability. And that was really my kind of foundation for fitness. And within a 6-month period, I stripped 20 pounds of body fat, put 20 pounds of lean muscle. And candidly, I wasn't overweight or obese. Yeah. But I wasn't confident, I wasn't fit, and then going through that transformation, I mean, dude, it just fucking just jolted me with this massive level of clarity, mental clarity, and just confidence. And from a sales perspective, I went from the least performing sales rep in my company all the way to the highest performing sales rep in my company. And Jay, one thing changed, it was just my fitness. So that really kind of gave me that foundation and new look for, what will become a huge passion of mine.
What were you selling at the time?
I was actually in career coaching. So I used to run a career development program for college students. So the company I work for, we used to bring in, and for example, use Los Angeles, my market. I bring in 300 kids from all across the country into LA for the summer. UCLA would have empty space for their dorm rooms, so we house them there. And then my job was to sell the program to the student, to their parents, because it's an $8,000 price tag, kind of like a summer camp for college kids, except instead of going to play sports, they're coming to get a career development opportunity. Yeah. And then what I would do is once we enrolled the students, and then I would sell the different companies, a lot of entertainment companies, MTV, Fox, NBC, on why they should take our kids for the internship. Yeah. So it was a career coaching / sales role.
Yeah. Okay. And then so how'd you transition out of that?
Yeah. So as I got fit, it just really erupted my confidence. And at that period of time, I had no, initial vision that I was actually going to enter the fitness space, because my sales career started taking off. I was 25, 26 years old, making six figures, doing well in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. But then after,
and living in LA, single.
It was great.
Yeah. What year was this?
This was 2007 was my transformation. So this is from 2007 to 2009, 2010. Okay. This is this time frame. Yeah. And after kind of living that lifestyle, Jay, I'll never forget, some dude walks up to me, and at that point, I had learned to be fit. It benefited my life, from a confidence level and from a business perspective. Yeah. But I didn't think about, potentially going into the space professionally. But dude, guy walked out to me at the gym, and my identity hadn't fully changed as a fitness professional. And he introduced himself, and he's like, "I've been watching you. I was curious, how you lift weights, how you train, how you eat." And this light bulb went on. I was like, dude, man, what if I could, kind of help some dudes like this in the nights and weekends? And so I decided, I'm going to get certified as a personal trainer. I went through National Academy of Sports Medicine. Wow. And after I did that, I think I updated my Facebook profile to personal trainer, and then none other than our dear friend Bedros Koulian started serving me ads on how to start a fitness business, how to launch a fitness business, how to grow a fitness business, how to get better clients and results and get more profitability. Yeah. And so I jumped on his email list and started following along. And this is from the period of 2010 to 2012. So that all said, though, my sales career is going. I'm on, Bedros' email list, but I always wanted to live in another country, learn another language. I wanted to test my mettle at some point. And in 2008, I took a trip with my buddies to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And I come from Michigan, Midwest, the winters, my vision of December is fucking shoveling snow, freaking miserable, right? So I show up to Rio de Janeiro in Christmas time in 2008, December, and it's like blazing summer, the chicks, the girls. I was like, this sounds awesome.
Right.
So I ended up, because I was doing so successful in my career, I ended up asking my boss, and this is before, the pandemic and remote working and all that. But I was like, hey, Eric, would you be open? I've always had this dream of living abroad if I could work remotely for a year. And he bought the bait.
Nice.
And I didn't move to Rio de Janeiro. I ended up finding an island in the very south, kind of like the San Diego of Brazil, called Florianopolis.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving there for 2 years, and kind of like a wild story. I ended up meeting my wife. She picked me up from the airport. We got introduced to a mutual friend about a week before I left, which is kind of a wild story in of itself. But ended up meeting her, living with her family for a couple years.
Huh. How long were you there before you met her?
Dude, she picked me up from the airport.
Oh, the first day.
So how the story goes is first day, dude.
Wow.
Freaking like straight out of a movie. So I decide this is what I'm gonna do, arrange all the logistics. Of course, my family and friends know what I'm doing. I send an email to my extended family and friends, maybe like a few weeks before I leave, saying this is what I'm doing and why. I get a call from a buddy I used to party with in Newport Beach. And he's like, hey, Bryce, this is Steve's, Mark's buddy. I was like, oh, what's going on, Steve? He's like, dude, Mark just forwarded me this email, said you're moving to this island called Florianopolis in Brazil. Is that right? I'm like, dude, I'm moving next week. And he's like, well, this sounds wild. I went to college. I grew up in Ohio, but I know a girl that I went to college with that she's from that island. If you're interested, I'd be happy to put you in touch. And dude, I was like, I'll take all the help that I can get. End up putting her with me in touch. And she responds and she's like, yeah, well, depending on, when you get in, my schedule's pretty flexible right now. Potentially I could even pick you up from the airport. Dude,
wow.
The day was set,
nuts,
freaking
dude.
Fly, 24 hours, 3 flights, the other end of the world. And my wife, Tatiana, picks me up. She's here today. And,
amazing.
It's a wild story.
That is crazy.
So,
okay, so you were there for a few years, and then how did you end up back here?
So there for a few years, and I knew it wasn't going to be like a long-term thing. I just wanted to have this like life experience. And in early 2012, I knew I was coming back to California. And I put all my stuff in storage in Costa Mesa, like here in Orange County. And when I was planning on coming back, I started paying attention to B's emails, and he started talking about this little thing called Fit Body Bootcamp, which was a licensee program at the time, transitioning into a full-fledged franchise system.
Yeah.
So I paid attention to it. I was excited. It was interesting to me. So I put in an application or expressive interest and did all the research I possibly could. And then in 2012, when you could get a meeting with B, back in the day, it turns out, ended up heading to Chino Hills. And at that point, I had done all the research. I knew specifically, I guess, what I was getting into. But, I'm a relationship guy. I'm a people guy. So I wanted to kind of, pass the sniff test, and I had the opportunity to be in Southern California and showed up, met B, and within 5 minutes, I was like, dude, this guy's awesome. This is exactly what I want to do. And ended up linking gears or partnering with Bedros for my first franchise location. This is 2012.
Where was that?
Yorba Linda, which is in North Orange County.
Yeah.
So I was living on the beach, Newport, Costa Mesa for quite some time.
Awesome.
But I knew that at that point I still hadn't come to full terms with my addiction. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I instinctively knew though, I wanted to kind of like get a little bit more inland. I need to move away from some of my fast friends. I need to get a little bit more focused in. So why I picked Yorba Linda, I had never lived there, but it's a little bedroom city just north of Disneyland. And I had a friend who, her father was like a very successful medical practitioner in Anaheim Hills, which is the city next door. So I knew that this place called Anaheim Hills, Yorba Linda area, has a good demographic, had a lot of, good levels of income. So that's the reason I decided to start my business there, and that's where I launched.
And so, so you just make the investment, you open up one location there.
Yep.
It starts doing well, obviously.
Yeah.
And then what happens next from there?
Dude, man, it was a wild ride. So I'll give you a highlight. There was a lot of lowlights and learning lessons. But after linking up with B, and at this point, the franchise system was a completely different space. B had all these strong vision and coaching, but from a systems and operation perspective, it's not nearly what it was today. So I had a rough start for the first couple months, but then once because I launched November 5th, 2012, launching a fitness facility in November is probably not the best idea, but it's the way it worked out. But once I got over the New Year hump and then followed B's coaching, man, and from 2013 and on, it just went, gangbusters. And ended up opening 5 locations within a 6-year clip. Brought my family on board. My wife, was from there.
All within kind of like.
Yeah, the area, like all in Orange County. Okay. I had one location from a real estate perspective that was in North County, San Diego, so that was a bit of a trek. Okay. But overall, they were all based in Orange County with one in San Diego.
And how involved was B back then? Like, were you guys having a ton of interaction during that time, or?
Well, I mean, dude, he's like just a freaking OG, right?
Yeah.
So I knew I wanted to latch my, my business along to his coaching. So every opportunity, and this is where I first, I met you from, you speaking on stages through B's Ethers. Just went to every single nutrition event, every single business event that B had, joined his mastermind, joined his coaching program, tapped into the system. So I did as much as I possibly could to put myself out there to learn as much, and also too to like build a network with B. Never in a million years, I wasn't looking to like, connect with B so that eventually I could be a VP and the CEO. Never in a million years occurred to me. I just wanted to like learn, connect, get as much information so I could apply to my business and grow being a, hard charging entrepreneur. And that was kind of the first 6 years of our business relationship, and I became one of the most successful, franchise partners in the brand, and we're in the relationship business. So, B thankfully just kind of took a liking, and that's kind of how that relationship developed.
Well, let's talk about that a sec. So we are in the relationship business, but a lot of people are not good at that. They just think, okay, I'll learn the business stuff, I'll learn how to train people, I'll learn nutrition, whatever.
Yep.
I don't know you that well, but I know automatically just being around you, you're good at that. I've heard from B.
Thank you.
So was that something that you actively were like, all right, I gotta really be good at this. I gotta be reading How to Win Friends and Influence People, or were you naturally like that, or both?
Probably a little bit of the opposite, actually. So like opposite in the sense that I always, love people and I love building relationships. So that was kind of factored installed. Of course, like it's a skill set you can continue to get better at. But for me, like my biggest kind of self-limiting belief of like getting in the training space was my lack of knowledge on like human movement and kinesiology and nutrition and all that. So like my first 6 months was trying to like learn as much as I possibly could, because for me, that was a bit of a deficiency. And that was helpful, but then what I realized in the business in a very short period of time, that's important. And granted, now with the franchise, we have the systems and the coaching and all that kind of are already downloaded, but it's the relationship more than anything. And that allowed me to like flourish, because I was like, okay, I need to know this and I need to be a student of health, nutrition, et cetera. But I can apply that and then really just like focus on, building relationships with people and building a team. Like, this is what my zone of genius, this is what I really enjoy.
Awesome. So keep going kind of on that theme. Like what else, if you want to expand on that a little bit, but what else enabled you to be so successful? Not everyone that opens up a franchise is going to blow it up and be super successful like you were. So talk about some of the things that you did that helped you stand out and helped you grow.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm driven. I mean, we're both cut from the same cloth, like hard charging, like want to be successful, have like really high standards for ourselves, like self-improvement, self-mastery. So I've always been from the mindset of like, hey, I'm not good enough as is. Like I need to get to another level. I need to, continuously improve myself. So when you focus on personal growth like that, you show up with a different type of energy. And I think that probably like helped me, not only in my relationship with B or our franchise system, but just in terms of my team, my clients, et cetera. So I think I have always, had that. Also too, Jay, I mean, shit, man, coming from humble beginnings, I mean, we can kind of relate to some of our background and story. My family's come from addictive, struggles with addiction and very blue collar, good, hardworking people, but very blue collar mentality. And I knew like inherently I wanted something more for my life. So that was kind of another passion. I was running away from my past and then running, towards something, bigger and better and brighter. And that was probably, it took me a while to realize that, but subconsciously that was a big, motivator. Fitness fucking changed my life, man. So like just the passion of fitness and what, for me, I'm a strong believer for my sales career, now for my leadership and business ownership career. What's been really, a foundational point of success for me is like finding something I believe in and then selling the shit out of it. So for me, like, the fitness element was just really, really, it was powerful. And, at the time from 2012 to 2020, like the fitness industry, functional industry, I mean, just kind of like skyrocketed after the Great Recession. So I think differently, some people kind of got in what I saw from other fellow franchise partners during that period of time. They saw business opportunity, they saw data and all that trends. Which is okay. Like it's good to, be accustomed to that as a business owner. But for me, I saw like a passion-based business that I absolutely loved. So that also too, like helped me, stick out. And like I said, I mean earlier, like I'm a relationship guy, I'm a people guy. So like this business, being in the relationship, it just lent itself to my skill set. And then finally, I didn't know this at the time, and dude, this is, I feel silly, but for probably 4 or 5 years, listen to you speak, listen to B speak, listen to all these guys that, I've really learned a lot from the years, talking about the foundational focus you need to become a better leader. First of all, yourself, and then of your team. And then finally, probably a few years in, the like light bulb finally went off. I need to develop my leadership skills, because I developed my fitness skills, my people skills, my salesmanship skills, and then really leadership is a form of salesmanship. But then I realized that that's kind of my calling, and I love pouring into people, I love connecting with people, and also too, if I'm being very candid with you, Jay, one thing that I really love about leading people, it holds me accountable and responsible, because I'm an addict to my core.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when I see a bum on the street, when I see someone, a heroin addict, I look at that, and I'm not like casting blame. I'm thinking like, with a one or two decisions differently, I could be that fucking guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? So for me, why I really started developing leadership ability and focus on that is because, one, has a massive impact. Like from a leverage perspective, you can grow and you can have a bigger impact and grow your business, help more people. But also too, it helps hold me accountable, because from a moral authority perspective, one of the best ways I found to lead is just leading by example. I just do my thing, I just lead by example. Yeah. That's the best way to influence, from my humble opinion. And if you or others have better strategies, I'm open to learn, but that's what's worked for me.
Yeah. And I was just listening to B on stage before I came in here, and the last thing I heard him say as I was walking out was, he will self-destruct as bad as anyone. And that's why he has to have a purpose and a mission and, lead and do all these things. And I'm totally like that too. I will self-destruct like a motherfucker. Is that something for you too? It sounds like that's basically what you were just saying.
Amen.
But if you don't push yourself and constantly grow and lead and be the example for people, I would imagine coming from an addictive background, you can self-destruct and get down on yourself and things like that.
Totally. And then B also tells a story, which I know you've heard him say as well. It's like the German Shepherd.
Yeah,
the German Shepherd. Was he telling that today too?
Yeah.
So like German
I've
Shepherd.
only heard it 482 times.
A few more times than me, but that's me, man. Like, and I get, we're cut from the same cloth. B as well. It's like, I need mission, and for your audience, maybe hasn't heard that story. A German Shepherd needs purpose. It needs something to latch onto. Without purpose, a German Shepherd start digging holes, and that's a great metaphor for life. And I will dig fucking holes in my life if I don't have a purpose to attack and people to lead.
Yeah. And so being that driven, the other question I want to ask you is, how do you balance that? A lot of people will see successful people like yourself or whatever, you're fucking driven, you're relentless. Do you ever get down, where it's like you're winning? I think people like us sometimes have a hard time celebrating wins. And then, okay, so but you don't get down. You're just like, okay, what's next, right? But do you have ups and downs? And then how do you recognize that and come back, right?
Yeah, great question.
Because I used to have those downs that would last for 1 to 3 months. And then the win was, okay, now they only last for 3 weeks. Then the win was, now they only last for 2 weeks. Now they last for a week, a day, whatever. And like, how to get back, right? So talk about that. Because I think we were talking about it last night, like every high performer I know, there's these highs, but they don't celebrate them as much as the average person does. Correct. It's like, oh, that was cool, what's next? Like Kobe Bryant would say, done, next.
Let's go.
Dude,
it's something I still struggle with.
Same.
Honestly. So I don't have this all figured out. I don't have it all figured out. Man. As for as much success as I've attained, and I feel very accomplished and proud of that. Dude, the mountain's still high. But for me, that's just, case in point. The biggest thing that I need to continue to work on is just being present and being in that moment and celebrating those wins. So you feel that win, you can have a sense of joy, and that does not come factory installed with me. And I can't say, I don't want to compare myself to Kobe Bryant considering his accolades, but I can compare myself to that mentality in the sense of, hey, once you get on that pinnacle, there's a lot of times it's like, all right, great. Now, like, what's next?
Right.
And if you don't really fully enjoy that moment, then sometimes you can set yourself up for, that depression and, having a low period. Thankfully, after I stopped using drugs and alcohol, like those extended periods of lows, like, have vanquished.
Yep.
But it's me versus me, man, in the mirror. I'm my own worst enemy. So it's just trying, and I'm not a big believer in balance, but it is trying to find space, if you will, to celebrate that. And then that way I can like sit in it and feel that joy. And then, all right, like now what's next?
Yeah, totally. I found one of the things that was best for me, and that speaks to like your inner circle, right? Surrounding yourself with people who are living, operating, thinking, whatever, the way you want to, is I celebrate everyone else's wins more. Like I was in there watching B before, and I was almost tearing up just because I love him that much. And I'm like, to see what he's doing, like it makes me so happy. And last night at dinner, I think me and Tony were tearing up. Like I'm so lucky and fortunate to have that crew, people that I love so much, but like their wins mean more to me. Like one of my closest friends, became the first female to headline WrestleMania a few years ago. And like, I remember sitting front row. So the pay-per-view goes off, right? First time in 38 years that anyone female headline WrestleMania. The pay-per-view ends with her holding up the 2 title belts. She beat Ronda Rousey and Ric Flair's daughter. Holds up the 2 belts and comes up to me and Jen in the front row and hugs us and says, "I love you guys," as it's going off the air in front of a zillion people worldwide. And I'm just thinking, I've never been so proud of someone. I've never celebrated any of my own wins like that, you know, like. But I think that's good. That's good because, like, again, like you and I are like, your own win's like, whatever, cool, let's move on. But if it's your win, or if it's B's win, or if it's Becky's win, I'm like, yo, let's celebrate for a month. Like, this is awesome, you know? Well, like, so when I started focusing more on other people than myself, everything changed. Because I could really dip into depression if I'm focused on myself, you know?
Totally. Dude, and then for me, that's the story of addict. Like when I'm focused on myself, I get fucking selfish, man.
Yeah.
And when I realize I need to get away from the selfish into the selfless, that's when, you know, bliss happens.
Yeah.
And good on you, man. Like that says a lot about you. And, you know, I like to think I'm cut from the same cloth of really focusing and celebrating others. And that's just what makes this, this ride way better.
Totally, yeah.
I know I asked you just offline, but, you know, B has been, you know, raving about you for years. What was your first, connection with B, and how did you guys meet?
Just at, I think we had seen each other around, you know, I knew of him, he knew of me. I think we messaged each other back and forth. And then Craig Valentine, our mutual friend, had a Toys for Tots drive in Denver. And we were just hanging out the whole weekend. We hit it off. And a lot of times people just say, yeah, we should hang out, and nothing ever happens. But I was super proactive about it. So we got back to SoCal. We live 45 minutes away. And I was like, hey, let's do this, let's train. We're going to our first concert. We're going to your first baseball game. And that was it. And then we have a lot in common.
And by the way, dude, so just for audience, I've literally heard B talk about, you know, the comedy shows and then the music, ventures with you, the concerts and all that. Every single time he references this Jay Farouche is always tagging there. So like, I know you through that particular experience with him, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I got a bone to pick with him, but do you know the episode where he talked about when he used to tell it on stage, but on one of the episodes of his show, maybe 3-4 months ago, he told the story about the first time we had edibles together?
I think I've heard that in person, not necessarily in the podcast.
Changed it on the show, and I got to address that with him.
I would love to hear the update.
Because it was my first time doing edibles, and he made it sound like I was a lifelong pothead. I was like, bro, I just turned 40. I never touched weed before. You grew up smoking.
Oh, I think that's actually how it's framed.
Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly. I was like, dude, what? What are you throwing me under the bus?
Oh, that's funny.
I never touched weed. I'm 40.
Oh, that's funny, man.
Yeah. Oh my God. But speaking of weed, we were talking about addiction, and so you gloss over it a couple times. Let's go back in the timeline a little bit, because you had mentioned like, oh, I got to move from my friends in Newport that are drinking too much. But like, when did this all start? And kind of, obviously, when you said I want to move, that was kind of a transition into, but talk me through it a little bit and some of the struggles.
Yes.
And were there times where you're like, oh, I'm great, and I fell the fuck off again?
So it's interesting, my story with addiction, with time, it became less frequent, but more aggressive, which is kind of an interesting dichotomy. And it took me a long time to actually realize. So it's interesting, the beautiful part about my mom getting us out of that situation, my father is, after the first 10 years of really volatility, it became stable from one context, not from a financial perspective, but that I create stability. The downside is I didn't actually get to see from like 10 to 21, those developmental years, like the impact that really addiction can have, which is a good and a bad thing, right?
Bryce, can I interrupt you 1 sec?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to answer this. Was there violence in the house?
For the most part, it wasn't until the very end. It became violent at the very end, and that was actually the straw that broke the camel's back. There was a situation where my dad came out after, a 4-day bender, gambled away a few $1,000s of money we didn't have, and then ultimately many verbal arguments. I was just like a very aggressive household because of that friction. Right. But then it turned violent, and my mother, got out of there thankfully with her life, and then that was that.
Wow.
So. But in any case, so I didn't see that. So I just, in my mind, hearing the stories of my father being like, not homeless, but, he never had a job or like a stable job. He'd drink out of a brown paper bag every single day. I thought that was an alcoholic, which there's many alcoholics and drug addicts in that capacity, but there's a whole other spectrum as well.
Totally, yeah.
And I would actually consider myself like a very high functioning drug addict and alcoholic.
Okay.
So my first drink was probably 17, 18 years old. And, but very quickly, I didn't fully realize an issue at the time, but when I look back, I overshot the mark very quickly. What I realized in what my kind of scope being a recovering alcoholic, there's two types of people who drink alcohol specifically. About 90% of the population, they have a drink, maybe a couple drinks, and they're like, hey, I'm good,
Yeah.
And there's about 10% of us that have one drink and they're like, okay, 2 sounds good, 3 sounds good. And then before you know it, there's no governor until I pass out or throw up or whatever the case may be. And I'm that type of drinker.
Yeah.
So I got exposed in high school, college, and I joined the fraternity and all that. But it was hard to see in the moment because I was a functioning alcoholic.
Right.
Like I'd get my stuff done. Like I said earlier in the show, I had 17 jobs. Donated blood plasma. I was like a hustler. I was always doing stuff. So throughout the week, I'd get my stuff done. I graduated, put myself through school with a 3.0, which it wasn't a 4.0. I didn't go to Harvard or Ivy League, but it was solid for me. But in the weekends, I freaking let my hair down and, it became very binge drinking in nature. And then I have actually shared this.
So it was just weekends, it wasn't during the week?
Correct.
Okay.
It actually, from college, it was probably Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Okay.
And then as I then transitioned to California, this actually hasn't something I've shared on stage, but I'm going to, I discovered in Los Angeles, there's this white substance. It turns out to be a Schedule I narcotic by the street name of cocaine. And I ended up discovering this for about a handful of years. And what I realized was, again, I didn't fully see the issue, but it extended my drinking. So instead of me drinking, like overshooting the mark, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, I pass out, or whatever the case may be, I could continue the party, throughout throughout the evening. So that was a part of my story as well. Throughout my 20s. But this is also in the time when I was just telling you, I got fit, I was doing all these things. But then when I started my business, I had this realization, probably not a good idea if I'm gonna be launching a health and fitness, business, that I'm doing a Schedule I narcotic, okay? So I had some sense, so I saw the light there, so I put that away. But my drinking career continued. But again, while I kind of got serious and I kind of moved away from my friends, it didn't fully, be removed from me. And that continued for a while, but really what the straw that broke the camel's back, my big aha moment was, ended up hiring my sister to open my second location, who's just an incredible soul, extremely charismatic, deeply empathetic. She didn't have a fitness background, but I just knew that she just had the it factor. When we were younger, she'd watch my brother and I play sports. We used to go see her in theater and get her standing ovations. She was the belle of the ball. So I had a very strong feeling that I could teach her the fitness thing, and then she'd be able to build a strong community. And that's exactly what happened. So we launched my second business. But then
let's just pause for 1 second, because that's a huge business lesson for people, at least specifically in this industry. Alan Cosgrove, do you know Alan Cosgrove? Has a great quote that I always loved. He said, I'd rather hire the bartender down the street who has the amazing personality that everyone loves than the person who's got all the book smarts and the fitness, like, but that guy's like talking to this table,
Dude. And actually, even like a story within a story, my most successful coach of all time, 4-year kinesiology, masters, like had all this experience, like had a hard time connecting with humans. Eventually I had to part ways with him.
Yeah.
Where then my sister, I actually had to part ways with her, but for a different reason.
Right.
But she has no fitness experience, but she can connect and just bring out the best in people, and that really attracts people.
Yeah.
So that's an incredible lesson within our industry.
Yeah.
So anyways, I launched my second business. She was a partner in that, head coach. And within 6 months, some problems started to happen all around alcohol. And she was actually living in LA at the time before we launched our second location in Orange County. And she was working in the entertainment industry. And how that came to be, my mom reached out to me and she's like, hey, Bryce, I think there's an issue with your sister drinking alcohol. And at that period of time, I genuinely didn't think that was the case. But I was also on the other side of the coin. I knew in the back of my mind, I didn't fully come to the realization that I had a full-blown issue. But I was like, shit, I'm just kind of dealing with my own self right now. So I kind of was in denial a little bit, but her screams my mom's screams kind of got a little bit louder. I had this mother's intuition. So that's when I set the plan in place. All right, she can move down with me for a year. We can launch a business and then, kind of take things from there. But within about 6 months of that experience, her alcoholism started to kind of showcase, and it started problems with my family, with my wife. And then she started having, family relationship issues outside of that. And then issues started happening in the business, and then eventually legal issues. So it came to a head where it realized, okay, this is not sustainable. And a story I'm going to share here at BK Live, the kind of straw that broke the camel's back was, ended up having a fitness challenge in the fall of 2016, and it was an incredible challenge where clients got a ton of results. And then afterwards, we had a celebration party for him. And it was interesting. At a few other locations at the time, I don't know what my sister was thinking. She's an incredibly, talented and smart, girl. I guess her addiction was, kind of taking hold. And I was there, but I wasn't there running the event. So I showed up there, and she was leading her team, and I noticed something was off. And it turns out my team was not on point. They weren't, they were under the influence of alcohol. And when my sister, gets up and she starts, opening remarks, it became very clear that she was also under the influence. So as you would imagine, frustrated, pissed off, embarrassed, was able to kind of navigate that situation. But afterwards, the day afterwards, and this is like, at this point, it had already been, about a 3-year period of like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Yeah. And it was already kind of like the tension was already there. And I, the worst, the saddest moment in life, I had to part ways with her. And she, to her credit, being a great human being, deeply empathetic, she, built this community. She begged and pleaded. She's like, I'll do whatever it takes. I know I was wrong, but I'll, correct this situation. I said, okay, forever's a long time. I'm not going to ask you forever, but for the next 12 months, I'm going to ask you, we need a written agreement that you're not going to drink alcohol. Because I don't know when I'm going to walk into a challenge party. I'm not walk into a conversation with our teammates or, have to, bail you out of legal issues. And that's just, not fair to you. It's not fair to our team. It's not fair to our business or clients. So she, signed off against that. And then I went home, and it was just like in a very emotional situation of like, dealing with all this for, quite some time, and dealing with the ramifications at the challenge party, and then having to meet my team, and then having this like gut-wrenching conversation with my sister. And I went to sleep, and I wake up, Jay, the next morning, and dude, like something changed in me. And I looked at the mirror, and dude, I had like a deep, dark look at the mirror. And two things became very apparent to me. I looked at like my life flash by me, and all like the alcoholism in my family, the addictive behavior, like my father's track record, like flashed before me, all the chaos in his life, and, hearing stories, his father had the same issue. Wow. And then seeing like my mom, good, this sweet lady wanting the best for her family, being like ripped away from her husband because of this, disease, knowing my own issues, okay, that I was like depressing and denial about. And then now seeing like my kid sister, who I love, adores, like my best friend growing up, seeing her these issues, it was like, when is the fucking cycle of addiction going to end? Yeah. So that was the first the first thought. But the second thought, Jay, was, I realized at that moment in time, and I can understand why, that our society will forgive criminals, but not hypocrites. And there I'm looking at, her, or looking at the mirror, but like, remembering my conversation with her the previous day. And I'm asking her to do something that I wasn't even willing to do myself. And I'm like, Bryce, how fucking hypocritical of you. Like, that is no way to lead. And, from that moment, that was, I realized the jig was up, and I needed to change my ways. And that was December 2016, the last time I drank alcohol.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So.
And how's she doing?
Sadly, it doesn't have a happy ending for now.
Okay.
Not, the family hope is still hopeful.
Okay.
But, what I realized is I can't affect her. And I also realized in the moment, there's nothing that I can physically do to make her abstain from alcohol. And we're hoping for the best and always there support. But what I can do is basically, focus on me and realize that I need to lead with moral authority. I need to keep my side of the street clean. And it's not easy, man. It's a 24-hour kind of period. Now, the good news is, being nearly 7 years in at the time of this recording, like I've lost the obsession to drink alcohol, and I never had it daily. Yeah. But ultimately, that said, humbling myself, I go in the rooms of a very popular 12-step program, which has been really helpful for me. And it's sometimes sobering. You hear guys sometimes in the rooms that are 7, 10, 15 years. One guy that I listened to last week, 22 years sober, and then decided to drink again. So for me, you know, 24 hours at a time. I feel good about where I'm at, but it's having that white belt mentality, that humble mentality that, you know, just because I've had nearly 7 years now doesn't mean that I can't, you know, ruin things tomorrow.
Yeah.
So.
Talk to me a little bit about the beginning of that and how much harder it was at the beginning and maybe some proactive steps you had to take to not drink. And like, what was the mindset? Obviously you said it was because, you know, you're being hypocritical, you got to lead your sister. I would assume it was, you know, setting the example for other people.
Yeah, totally.
A little bit around the mindset and just the proactive steps you took at the beginning. And then fast forward to today, like, what's the difference now? Like, obviously it's got to be easier now.
Yeah. Incredible question. Again, for me, it was interesting, even to kind of preface this, to drive this point home. I had a hard time realizing that I had an issue with alcohol because the way I drank was different than what I classified an alcoholic.
Totally, yeah.
So while I wanted to be the role model for my sister, I also, you know, inherently knew, if I'm being very honest with myself, it just so happened it took like this catastrophic event where my family member was kind of front and center to make me wake up. But I knew that there was an issue.
Now, when you were binge drinking on the weekends, were you doing stupid shit? Were you getting in fights? Were you throwing up? Were you
any of all
everything,
of it, you know, and you know, just saying stuff that I didn't want to say after passing out early, just not being the guy that I, you know, who I was and I wanted to be.
Right.
And not every time. I don't like to talk in absolutes and whatnot, because there was many times it was fine, but there were more times than I like to admit, you know, made bad decisions. And, you know, look back in my 20s, I'm not proud of this at all and put a lot of people at danger, but there was probably a dozen times where I drank under the influence I drove under the influence. And, you know, having this realization, dude, that's like not good.
Right.
But that said, while I kind of articulated the story and I had that conversation, I had this like aha moment, when I decided to stop drinking, it wasn't like, hey, all of a sudden I'm good to go from that decision, December 2016. What I did for the following few months, and I didn't know there's a terminology called white knuckling it, but from like just a sheer discipline, I'm a highly disciplined guy, I know you are as well. I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna abstain from alcohol in my life. So I did that for a few months. But then when I realized this is in early 2017, like April or May timeframe, I was just getting like agitated. I was getting short, like my temper. I wasn't probably the best to my wife, Tatiana. So I realized like I needed probably something help, like a support group, if you will. So I researched from like unconventional all the way conventional ways to, you know, help me with this.
Yeah.
And I found a 12-step group, again, very popular and well known, and ended up after 4 months of just kind of sheer discipline, white knuckling it, you know, kind of suffering in silence, ended up, walking into a meeting, and Jay, dude, it's just human psychology and whatnot, but I was just like so scared and timid. I felt like that door is like a freaking 1,000,000 pounds.
Yeah.
And I opened that door and there was a bunch of dudes who were kind of like welcoming me in. But even so, the first probably few meetings, I just sat there. I didn't say a word. I didn't even identify, because the word to me, alcoholic, especially like hearing that from my mom over the course of time, considering like the issues with my father, was like saying the word of like an axe murderer, you know? So for me to finally admit that like, hey, my name is Bryce, I'm an alcoholic, was like, holy shit. And part of me, I mean, I'm in a room, a support group, so logically I knew that they were probably gonna be supportive, but like the little critic in my mind, I was just waiting for someone, you know, the group to be like pointing fingers and ridiculing me, and it was the opposite, man. It was like the weight of the world kind of got lifted from me, and that was kind of like the first, you know, path. And
did you try? A lot of times people will try to replace one addiction with another. Like, did you double down on your fitness at that point or anything like that? Or
I did. Yeah. Okay, so you know, from that perspective, so like that's still kind of a work in progress as well, you know, because, you know, when you double down on something like that, like I don't like the word balance, because I'm not a balanced guy. And I think if you want to achieve success in life, it's going to be hard to be balanced. Yeah. But I also think there's something about too extreme too. And that's just kind of like, you know, from my DNA. So it's still kind of been a work in progress for that to kind of try to find that, you know, equilibrium, if you will. But to your point, from 2017, that calendar year, the rest of the year was definitely the hardest part, you know, for sure. And like, you know, kind of going through the steps and, you know, getting a mentor and a support group and all that. Yeah. But probably about a year into it is, you know, when I then kind of realized, okay, this is like the new path. And there's been a lot of incredible benefits. Probably the best benefit from this, and it probably took about 12 months to fully like realize this, but it's just like the increased self-confidence. It was kind of like getting fit round 2 again.
Oh, nice.
And the reason that was, I didn't know this at the time, but B talks about the time, is that confidence is just self-trust.
Yeah.
And if you make a promise to yourself more than anyone, but if you make a promise to yourself and you don't keep that promise, you erode your self-trust. But the opposite is also true. When you make a promise, you keep that promise, like all of a sudden you're like, oh dude, I'm a trustworthy person of myself, and that's where confidence is derived.
Yeah.
So for me, I mean, dude, it opened up a round 2, like this whole level, a new level of confidence for sure.
Yeah.
And that was a huge winning point. And then I don't think it's, coincidence that, probably another 6 months in, at that point, I was in one of B's Empire, and Craig Valentine for that matter, they launched Empire Coaching Mastermind Group.
Yep.
So I was in their group, and I communicated, B was the first one that I communicated even about 6 months before I stopped drinking, that I had this like ambition. He was the first person I told. I read him a yearly letter, and in that letter is kind of when I first kind of like opened up to him, and he gave me some coaching and guidance. But kind of going through that journey, and then I don't think it's coincidence, just like seeing the transformation, seeing my confidence levels, that it worked out, and B saw something in me and decided to make me a VP role and then eventually the CEO. So I wouldn't, be in front of you today if I didn't make that decision. It was like the most humbling, scariest, but ultimately, and challenging, but also like the decision that just like opened up my life.
Yeah, wow. So what's weird is, as I'm listening to you saying that, is I'm recollecting recently I've had a lot of conversations with addicts, but because of my inner circle that I've kind of curated and cultivated, I don't really spend time with those kind of people, and so it almost was weird recently, for whatever reason, I've had a lot of this come back, and I don't know what it is, what circumstances, but I'm like, man, there are so many people struggling with so many different kinds of addiction. It's crazy. I almost blocked it out for a little bit. I think it was when I moved, like I grew up around addiction, so it was everywhere.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like, I gotta get the fuck away from that,
like your
right?
family or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I moved 3,000 miles away, reinvented myself, and I'm like, I guess you just put blinders on. Like, I don't want to know about anything from my past, right? Like, everyone's just on the straight and narrow. We're all on the same path, right? And now I don't know, maybe I don't know why, but I've been having so many conversations with addicts and working with so many addicts and stuff like that. And I get it. It's so challenging. Like, I have it in me. I deal with it all the time too. So, not to put you on the spot as like an addictions counselor, but if someone's listening or watching this, what would, do you have any advice? Like, because just the other day I had a conversation with a guy. He's like, man, I want to do all the things you're saying. I want to do your program. He said, I think I could do all the things you're telling me to do every day, but I don't trust myself to stop drinking. And I have another guy, super close to, did great, lost 30 pounds, and then just fell off. He's drinking again. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, fuck, what did I do wrong? What would you say to someone like that who's like, I don't think I could stop drinking, or I don't think I stopped doing drugs, or whatever their addiction is, right? Gambling, whatever it might be. Do you have any advice, like first steps or thoughts or anything like that?
Well, you can, first and foremost. And if I can do it, like anyone can do it, for sure. So it's a self-limiting belief, and I'm empathetic to that, because I thought for the longest time, there's no way that I could stop drinking because it's going to take away my social element, my ability to connect with people.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
Dude,
that's like one of the biggest ones.
Huge one.
I had that for years too, yeah.
And actually, even the first like 6 months, even of going to like normal dinner parties and stuff like that, it was a little like weird for me, because I was still like not comfortable in my own skin, because I used that as like a crutch, if I'm being honest. But when I got on the other side of that, dude, like I wouldn't never want to go back to that, or like slur my words and don't remember saying stupid shit. Now I can be like present in the moment. So number one, it doesn't feel like at the time, but you can. And I'm living proof of this. And there's many others, just like me. Before I go into any other steps, I would also say from that lens, it can actually be a superpower. So, like having, that addictive mind frame. So it's a double-edged sword for sure, but it can allow you to be super fit, to be super disciplined. I do a cold plunge, I have a cold plunge at my house, like 39 to 42 degrees, depending on the day, however the thermometer is set. But I get in there for 3 minutes and fucking it's like a torture chamber, right?
Always.
But like when I get out, man, it's like the endorphins pop, and I'm under the firm belief, like I'm a bit addicted to that. So it's a superpower. People are like, how the hell do you do that? I'm like, it's just kind of like, a factory installed me. So it can be a very, good thing if regulated. So I wanted to kind of like, highlight some positives.
Totally, yeah. No, I love that you brought that up. It's so true, yeah.
But
it's funny, B jokes around with me, like when I get into something, he's like, dude, you really get fucking locked in and obsessed with shit.
Locked in.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. So it can be a superpower.
Yeah.
But for me, when I look back at that, for the cocaine usage, that was, I mean, certainly it's very addictive as well. What I realized though, that was a lot easier to let go for me, because I think the root was the alcohol. Like that was like my go-to, and the cocaine kind of enabled the alcohol usage, if you will. But for me, the first 12 months were the toughest. You know? And it's just like anything. Like when you go into a fitness regimen, you know, say some of your clients are like, hey, dude, I can do the fitness, I can get dialed in. Well, take a step back. Before you could do that, before you were fit, you didn't come factory installed like fucking Superman. Like there was a period of time, whether it be 3 months, 6 months, 9 or 12 months, that you had to put in the work, and it was uncomfortable as hell. But then once you got through that, you realize like, I'm not gonna live any other way. And it's the same, that's been my experience at least, you know, with alcohol. Like the first, as I said earlier, the first like 3 months of like 3 to 4 months of white knuckling it without a support group, that at that point, like I was getting agitated and I was like, oh dude, like I need some sort of help. And I researched all stuff like unconventional, like, you know, psilocybin and mushroom ceremonies and all that.
Have you done that?
I did, yeah. Okay. Which I did a couple of those. And then—
Helpful?
Not to it was helpful in, it was
other ways.
In other ways, like it was like a therapeutic way, and it kind of like made me like self-reflect. But it wasn't something that like helped me with my addiction. So, but I read a lot of research on it. In fact, I Googled it during that period of time, like how do I overcome my addiction to alcohol? And a website came up like LSD, magic mushrooms, and I went on like this whole psychedelic thing, which I like at that point, this is, you know, 2006, 17 timeframe. I had no idea at that period of time. But anyways, for me, what worked was, you know, a 12-step program. And I look at it as kind of the same. It's actually the same formula when I oversee the brand Fit Body Bootcamp, CEO and not founder, Bedros is. But when you look at our fitness program, it's a group fitness program, okay? You actually have an instructor, but you have a bunch of people who are not fit trying to get fit. And I look at, you know, my program, I have a bunch of alcoholics like trying to stay sober, you know? So like common pain point, common mission. You know, tapping in 3 times a week. You know, candidly, I don't go 3 times a week. I'm like obsessively addicted to my work. So if I had probably a more kind of cookie cutter 9 to 5 schedule, I'd probably be going 3 or 4 times a week. My work's very demanding, so I get in my 1 meeting a week, which is solid. It keeps me grounded. There's also like the element of having a fitness mentor or sponsor, if you will. So when you look at coaching perspective, there's so many like analogies you know, on that. And, you know, from a fitness level, when a client comes in, they can't get fit, and then they you know, come into a community, they have instruction, they have, you know, like-minded people, they have like a coach or a mentor or sponsor. That's been the formula that's worked for me, you know, in my battle with addiction.
If we went out to dinner with 10 people tonight and everyone was drinking their faces off, would that impact you in any way, or you'd be fine?
No, no.
Would you get aggravated and be like, I gotta get out of here?
I would be fine. Social drinking is totally fine. The first 12 months, no. Like I didn't want to go to places where people were drinking. So like I was like touch and go with that. But after I got through that first year, like I'm cool. I can be around alcohol, no big deal. Now, what you said about like people getting shit-faced and all that, that's probably a different level. Like no one likes to be obnoxious from that level. But just like normal drinking, no issue. But the first 12 months, it was an issue.
You mentioned accountability there, which I think is so important for fitness, for business, for anything you're trying to get better at, right? So talk about the importance of accountability for any type of self-improvement.
Dude, man, it is everything. And earlier in the show, or I think offline, we were talking about this, like why I love leadership. It actually holds me accountable to my following. So in a very selfless, but also selfish type of way. I was telling my wife to this, you know, last week, I was talking about, you know, business and visions and, you know, just, you know, how to make more money and income and, you know, drive the business forward. And I turned to her and I said, you know, one, I love people and I love leadership, but it also holds me accountable. So, you know, for me, I'm walking and living proof of that. And then what I've seen, you know, when I first, you know, kind of shared with you my first fitness journey, my first fitness mentor, Adam, he introduced me to circuit training and lifting weights and clean nutrition. But dude, Jay, the biggest thing he introduced me to was accountability. For the first, I trained with him for 2 years, but for the first 6 months, hyper-focused. Like I trained with him 4 or 5 times a week. At first it was 4, then it escalated to like 5, and as I got more fit. And I look back at that life and why, when I first met Bedros and I first saw Fit Body Bootcamp, the biggest thing that spoke to me was accountability. Because I knew, okay, like there's fitness programs and all that, but without the accountability piece for me, I like to think that I would have continued, but I can't look you the IJ and say like I would have done it. So for me, it was the accountability piece, and I knew it worked for me and it worked for others. And now, from a fitness perspective, the accountability works within, my organization, but also too, even from a franchisor perspective, we have different franchise business coaches who hold our franchise partners accountable. So I think kind of putting a bow on it, if you look at human nature and we're evolved this way, we are more likely and prone to disappoint ourselves than we are disappoint other people. Yep, 100%. So even just the basic form of like having another person hold you accountable, like you intrinsically don't, like B, he was my fitness mentor, he still is, but like my fitness mentor for the first 6 years. Like as much as I wanted to dominate the business and grow my business, I didn't want to disappoint him. Yeah. He gave me the coaching. I was like, I've fucking come hell or high water. I'm not gonna like get the coaching and then come back to him in 3 months in my next meeting and then realize I didn't take action. He's gonna be disappointing me like hell no. Yeah. So for me, man, accountability is so important.
Yeah. I just want to circle back a little. So in becoming, one of the most successful Fit Body Bootcamp owners, share some more specifics like tactics, whatever on building a successful business. And then how did you transition to that CEO role? Like what happened there? Talk through that a little bit.
So I'll answer the first part first. I would say, not only for myself, but I look at all of our franchise partners, the ones who have the most success, maybe they didn't have a background in sales and marketing, but they have a healthy understanding, respect for it. Okay. And the kind of old vision, I forget the movie, build it and they will come, fill the dreams with Kevin Costner. That just is not accurate. Just build it and people ain't gonna come. You gotta sell and market the hell out of it. Yeah. So that's something I learned from B at a very early stage in the business is, his focus on sales and marketing and driving lead flow. So that was a big area of focus, and it still is to this day. Now, granted, I had the sales background, so I was confident that if I was in front of someone, kind of like we are today, I could sell them in the fitness program. But why I latched on with B and Fit Body Bootcamp is I just didn't have the marketing experience. Because when I'm in a sales role, my job was the phone rings, I convert that to a sale. Yeah. But when you run a business, you need to, not only do you need to convert the sale, but you need to make the phone ring. Then you got to run operations and HR and finance on that as well. But for me, I had that sales background, but I wanted the marketing background, and that's the reason I joined the franchise. But sales and marketing has been a big foundation for my success. And then of course, having passionate about the business, like I'm passionate about the operations of the business because the operations of the business is fitness. So I think for me, that's been a secret sauce and what I see, in our most successful franchise partners. In terms of like the CEO role and kind of grabbing to
let me just backtrack for 1 second. So there's that, and a mistake a lot of businesses make is, just try to get new people in and fuck the people that are in. Oh shit. So talk about retention and keeping them. What's important there?
Dude, so my brother is my executive director of coaching and accountability, profitability. He is one of our most successful owners as well. He's based in Michigan where I first grew up. And his whole focus is actually on coaching our franchise partners, and retention is the main focus. I mean, he says, if you want to grow your business, fucking lock the back door. Yeah. So that's really also what it comes down to is too. Like you need to be able to sell and market and bring people in, but you got to retain and you got to love people up because you go insane if all you're focusing on is bring new people in, but like it's literally just like churning in and out. There's no way to grow a profitable business.
So talk about some tactics for retaining them.
So we have a marketing calendar, to bring in new sales and new clients in, but we also have an internal marketing calendar. We call it client engagement calendar that we put out to our franchise partners so they deploy. And really, it's just gamifying fitness. So there's different challenges and different things. For example, we did in July. We're in September now, but we just finished a 25 in July. It was just kind of like an attendance accountability game. Like you print out like reports, they get a check mark for the time, and if they've gotten 3 sessions, if your client have gotten 3 sessions during that course of that week, they're entered in for a raffle at the end of the week. It's like the silliest thing ever.
Just simple stuff.
But like people, I mean, like kindergartners, like checking, putting stars on, and there's something gratifying about it. It's kind of like checking something off the list. So that's just one little example. We have what's called the Fit Body Food Drive. So every November, we do this brand-wide organizational thing where we, donate a lot of like cans, unperishable foods, for our local communities and food banks. And then we gamify it, so then we have raffles and all that. So you got to distract people from like the realities of like the hard shit that we need to go through. So I think also, it's that. It's also just a high level of training on your coaches, and it all comes back to the relationship. So a lot of the things that we do, in fact, you just mentioned how to win friends and influence people. That is an introductory coursework for all of our new coaches coming through.
I love that.
Because our coaches are 21, 25 years old, and our clients at Fit Body Bootcamp, they're, women and sometimes men as well, but in their, 30s, 40s, and 50s. So sometimes there's a generational gap. So how are you going to teach someone to be able to connect? And, that would be, one strategy to do that. But really from a relationship perspective, even more so than like a hardcore technical aspect is really how we, pour into our coaches and affect retention.
And I think honestly, and no offense, I think that generation needs it even more just because of the way they grow up now with this. It's you got to teach those people skills, learn those people
we're
skills.
Technology, immigrants. I mean, they're native to that. So.
So you were going to talk about how you ascended to the CEO role.
Serendipitous, man. I mean, I like to think I work hard charging. I've always been, focused on my growth and, connecting with people. But like I said, I mean, I didn't have an agenda that, hey, Bedros, I want to be, befriend you and get your coaching because I want to be the CEO of the business. It just kind of organically worked out, from that way. But it was definitely a crash course because, running a fitness business is challenging, just like running any business. But then to be, catapulted in and then run an international franchise, I mean, these are two separate things. One thing I learned specifically, I'm not necessarily first and foremost anymore in the fitness business. I have a passion for it, but now I'm in the franchising business. So it took me it's still ongoing, but it took me like 2 to 3 years of like hardcore foundational work, just learning franchising, franchising disclosure documents or FDDs or franchise agreements, the work that we have to do with the Federal Trade Commission, the yearly audit that we need to do. That's more just like an audit on business, but actually from a franchisor perspective. So that's been a whole world of, knowledge that I've had to acquire. And there's still a lot of stuff, I'm just learning every single day. But what I've learned and what I guess my zone of genius is I like people, I like to connect with people. And I'm confident in my own ability, but I'm also humble enough to realize that I don't know everything. And my kind of zone of genius is like finding people that are better and smarter than me at their zones of genius, and then being able to kind of assemble that team, get out of the way and let them execute. And I'll use an example of this, like my brother has referred to, he knows so much about probably like, not on your level considering the story career you've had, but knows a lot about exercise science, like kinesiology, et cetera, way more than me. Like he's in charge for putting the programming again for the whole brand. If I had to do that, fuck dude, Jay, we'd have a lot of her clients in our business. That's not my zone of genius. So being humble to realize, okay, like, hey, let's put him in this place. Our director of marketing, he's really, really strong. He's a student of B and Craig for a long time. Really, really strong in direct response marketing. Okay, cool. I have my person there. My operations and finance, people, very, very detail oriented and analytical. That's not necessarily my zone of genius. Like I don't gravitate to the analytics. It's very important. But again, surrounding myself with people that, are really, really good in their zones of genius. That's been a world of a difference for me and like my leadership being able to get into a CEO role.
Yeah, and how important is that for people who are struggling or want to get into business? For you, B always talks about like 95-5 or whatever versus 80-20. How important is that for you to identify your individual zone of genius, quadruple down on that and just outsource or hire, whatever, delegate everything else?
Well, big picture, I'm going to answer it two ways. Big picture, it's everything. So like if you want to grow and have a big, impact in business, like you have to focus, on your 5% and delegate everything out. But there's also something we said when you're just, in entrepreneurial mode and startup mode. Like I was the jack of all trades.
Got to do everything.
I had to be the janitor, the bookkeeper, like.
Which I think is good to know a little bit about it, because how are you going to bring someone in to fill that role?
Dude, and it's given me a lot of like institutional knowledge in the business, and also given me a lot of credibility with my franchise partners as well. Because I literally just gave a keynote at our World Conference last month in Dallas, and my message was, I had quite a few messages, but one of them is I've done every single job in this business. I'm talking to our franchise partners, our most successful multi-location owners. Some of them are here today. All the way down to like a newly entry-level coach who just started an organization. And to be able to relate to that is just really, really important from a leadership perspective. But I would say, one, it helps from a leadership perspective. Two, it helps from an institutional knowledge perspective. But three, it's actually just needed when you go into startup mode. Like I just, I had enough money to get the business off the ground back in 2012 when I opened my first Fit Body location. But I wasn't overly well funded. It wasn't like I had 12 months of starting capital. Like I had to, do the work in order, to what was needed.
Yeah.
But what I learned is then once I started, gaining clients, okay, then all right, now I'm going to outsource the bookkeeping. Okay, now I'm going to outsource the janitor, work. So what I did probably over the first 18 months of my local business, as I grew my clientele, and then I outsourced those things that were not my zone of genius or that were not money producing activities. And now today, Jay, my 3 areas of focus is I need to lead, I need to market, and I need to sell. Those are the 3 things that I need to do, in my role.
And what does your day-to-day look like? Or does it change? Do you have a set kind of?
A lot of meetings, probably more meetings that I would like to encounter, but that's just kind of part of my role. I try to keep the first 5 hours of my day consistent. So, my wake up times at 4:30, I get my workout in, I do my cold plunge, I have my thing. I don't have hours and hours of rituals, but I spend the first hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half on me to get started. I'm at my desk at 6:30. I don't take
Is there anything else you're doing in that morning?
Wake up at 4:30, I hit the weights, I do my cryo plunge. No, I just shower, get ready for the day, and then I'm at HQ at 6:30. So that's kind of my me time.
Yeah.
And then I get in at 6:30, and then I don't take any meetings till 10 a.m. Because that's my 3.5 hour window that I just need to work on everything.
I'm the exact same way. Yeah, nothing till 10. Yeah,
nothing till 10.
Can't talk to anyone till 10. Yeah.
There you go. Well, success leaves clues. But then 10, what happens is all hell breaks loose. Then I have my meetings and all that. And typically, my Mondays look like my Mondays, my Tuesdays look like my Tuesdays. So my whole week is not the same, but again, Mondays look like Mondays, Tuesdays look like Tuesdays. I'm in the film or in the studio with my man Pablo, who's recording this over here on Fridays. So that is very kind of formulaic.
Yeah, and you do that right at HQ there.
Yeah.
Nice. So what's next? What's the future? What's the vision?
Yeah, the future of the business is to continue to build our brand. I mean, COVID wasn't kind to brick and mortar and restaurants and fitness, but we were able to navigate that. Certain states, we were talking offline, did better than others. The Californias, the Jerseys, the Michigans, unfortunately that was a challenge. The Texas and the Florida locations, were able to kind of make it through. But ultimately, the last 18 months after the main kind of part of COVID, it's been really, really strong for us. We were rebounding at a clip even before COVID, which has been inspiring. B also had really big vision why he brought me in the business to lay infrastructure. So the last 4 years, even despite the craziness with the government regulations and that ridiculous, we've been able to build a strong infrastructure. So now the infrastructure is laid for our new franchise partners. We have a 100-member guarantee. So literally, we guarantee that our new franchise partners coming in the system will open their gym with 100 members or more.
Wow.
And that's due to on the back of my team, incredible infrastructure. So now it's about to capitalize off that infrastructure. In the next 3 years of exponential growth is the vision.
And Bryce, what about personally? You've mentioned a bunch of times that you have kind of that relentless pursuit of personal development, growth. What do you focus on for that? I assume it's probably same 95-5, a few things, but what do you focus on a regular basis? Maybe specific steps, and then do you have any resources, any books, any things that you recommend to people?
Yeah, well, I'm a student of leadership, student of personal growth. So being plugged into you and following you for quite some time, guys like you, Bedros, we're here at BK Live. So I always like to stay plugged in. Leaders are learners. So that's a mantra of mine. What I've really, honed my area of focus in terms of knowledge is leading, marketing, and selling. So those are typically the subjects that I, digest.
Yeah. Are you reading every day something on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Alex Hormozi just pumped out his book, $100 Million Leads. So, diving into that.
I assume it's pretty good. I haven't got
it. Dude, it's freaking awesome. So he has a way of taking very complex, ideas and simplifying them for knuckleheads like me. So that's been really beneficial. So that's kind of a practice. And then speaking of steps, actually, when I joined the first 12-step program back in 2017, I've been through the steps one time over, but I was just telling my wife, really the 12-step program I'm on, it's a journey of personal growth. It just so happens that removing alcohol is a byproduct of that. Mm-hmm. And I think why I had a hard time the first few months of my journey of just without getting support was I just tried to abstain. I just tried to use sheer discipline, we call white knuckling it, my way to success. And really what I've learned with the program is I need to grow into a better person. And as a default of that, like then, drinking alcohol and all that, it just kind of goes by the wayside. So I'm due to kind of do another cycle of the steps and, kind of clean out my closet and do that over and over again, like as a mantra of life. So that's from a personal growth and journey. That's what I'm going to be on my agenda for the next 6 months.
Amazing. Dude, I've enjoyed this so much. Is there anything that I didn't ask you, anything you want to talk about, or any last thoughts or anything?
Dude, man, you've done this before, clearly. This has been an incredible honor and privilege, and
Awesome.
for being connected with you for quite some time and watching you from afar and being in Be's ethers. One, I want to acknowledge you for like blazing the path of functional fitness and all that. That's been incredible. But no, for me, man, I'm just grateful for the opportunity, and we're just going to continue to work hard, grow, get better, myself first and foremost, looking at the mirror and, helping my organization in the process. So that's my big vision.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Appreciate it.
So good, man. It's great.